Ryan Chilcote, a journalist and political analyst. Ryan, always good to see you. Let me first ask you about these two men as people, because they have developed a cult of personality around their leadership that you almost can't separate the man from the nation. How worrying is that?
Well, look, I think that Vladimir Putin was probably a step ahead of President Xi in achieving that in Russia. And President Xi has sort of been playing catch up. Obviously, it's worrying. No one in Russia is talking about the Kremlin as if it could have any other leader than Vladimir Putin. When people talk about the future and the future of leadership in the Kremlin, they talk about 2035, which is, as you know, is a full, 13, 14 years away. So obviously it's worrying if you think that, democracy is a good thing and political competition and change in leadership. If you subscribe in those ideas, then making a state and the leadership of a state synonymous with an individual is never a good thing.
Yeah, exactly, because you kind of get the idea that possibly if Vladimir Putin wants something, it's definitely going to happen. If Xi Jinping wants something, it's definitely going to happen. If Olaf Scholz in Germany wants something, maybe the Bundestag might have something to say about that, et cetera, in other countries as well. OK, so what happens? How does the United States, we know that Joe Biden's talked about this a lot. Here I am, the president of the United States. I'm the defender of democracy against the authoritarianism that is rising around the world. What happens if Xi and Vladimir Putin get together and decide to act simultaneously? In other words, the Russians invade Ukraine and the Chinese invade Taiwan.
Well, that's an interesting hypothetical question, and I hope we don't see that happen. But that would really put the Biden administration and the world in a conundrum, wouldn't it? Right? I think that the West is already a little bit confused as to how to respond to Vladimir Putin if Russia was to make further incursions into Ukraine. I think the United States is confused as to what to do about China if China makes moves in the direction of Taiwan. If they were to happen at the same time, I think that would really be a perfect, or maybe better put, imperfect storm for U.S. and Western foreign policy, and probably would really complicate any kind of reaction, because even just one of those events has lots of follow-on consequences. The two of them happening together in two very different theaters, that could, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but that could have global consequences in terms of multiple conflicts, or the prospect of multiple conflicts appearing at the very same time.
But surely, again, these two leaders must understand that if they work together, they will surely be stronger in the face of what seems to be, since the Biden administration came to power, with Antony Blinken going around the world and being very, very blunt, warning the rest of the world about America's concerns of Chinese and Russian actions, whereas you often get a bit more subtlety from the Chinese and the Russians. Surely Xi and Vladimir Putin must understand together they could actually counter the West.
Well, it's an interesting point, Adnan. First off, the Chinese and the Russians have been working together for years. They do it in the Security Council all of the time. It's one of the big arguments against putting things through the Security Council, is that if it's a purely Western initiative and Russia and China aren't on board, or Russia or China isn't on board, then whatever resolution isn't going to get through the Security Council. So this partnership is not a new one. What's different, I think, is that first of all, we have the Biden administration, President Biden, clearly, even though you say what you just said about, sort of guarding the United States, talking about sort of being the guardian of democracy and fighting against authoritarianism, I think actually both President Xi and President Putin are reading the White House slightly differently. I think they see a White House that is very disinterested in getting militarily or overly involved, certainly militarily, but overly involved in international affairs, a White House and a United States, really, not just the White House, that just doesn't want to get involved in foreign conflicts. And I think they see this as an opportunity right now, perhaps, to advance their agendas. Does that mean the Chinese are going to go for Taiwan and Putin's going to go for Ukraine? Of course not. It just means that this is an opportunity for them to exert their diplomatic strength. and to do it together. But, China, one of the world's most powerful economies, maybe the first or second, depending on the day. Russia, not quite that. The U.S. looks at China much differently than it looks at Russia, and is much more concerned about China long term, precisely because of its domestic interests. Not because of what China's doing in the Asia Pacific region, which obviously is a concern, but the bigger concern is China, U.S. national security, Chinese trade with the United States. That's what the Biden administration is concerned about. Vladimir Putin, as I think President Obama once put it, is more of in this administration's eyes, a regional leader that is of concern, but poses no real existential threat, other than the fact that, of course, he has nukes to the United States.
Ryan, always appreciate and really find your analysis really interesting. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Ryan Chilcote in London.